that is regardless of what your position is, you can add value to the conversation and to the company and to the success of the project if you're willing to put yourself out there. And I love that you're talking about diversity, and how to give people a seat at the table.
Yeah, I find, people would laugh at me, but we would sit in our big conference room and we would be doing our reviews. And it would be interesting because as we would come in and sit at the table, there's probably 20 seats at the table and 20 seats along the walls. And a lot of the new people that were coming in, the younger people, a lot of the women, would sit along the wall, even though there were empty seats at the table.
Mm-hmm.
And, after a few months, I started to realize, they're waiting for an invitation. We've got to give them the opportunity to sit at the table. So just what you said, turning and looking at them and saying, hey, what do you think about that? Or as they walked in the room saying, hey, sit at the table here. There's empty seats. Let's, you're part of the team. Let's do that. And as you give them that invitation or that permission, what comes from them is amazing. They get a little confidence because they're at the table. They've been invited. And to your point, you know, the best ideas come from the trenches. They don't come from management, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we're leading, we're doing a lot of different things at a very high level, but the people who know what's going to work and what's going on are the people who are doing the job every day. So I think it's super important that they have a voice and that we help them find that and use it.
Man, I'm going to throw something out there to my business leaders, people that are running companies. I actually, Cindi, sat at a very similar table. It was a U shape, one of the heavy wood, probably $5,000 per table, all connected.
Yep.
With these big black leather chairs, and then, pardon my French, but the shitty chairs against the wall where, like you said, most of the lower level staff is sitting against the wall and there's empty executive chairs at the table. My shout out to the business leaders listening right now is get a bigger table, get better chairs for everybody, and have them all have a seat because, like you just suggested, they can bring the real value to the equation. And can you imagine all the missed opportunities the last 50 years of doing business of the people sitting around the room that weren't given a voice?
No, and I think that, for me, that was me, right? I was that person that was against the wall that finally got a seat at the table. And, and, what I did was very different than the path I took was very different than a lot of people took, but I had something relevant to say. As long as you're prepared for a meeting, as long as you've got something relevant to say, speak up. There's never been anybody who has spoken up that, got fired for saying something wrong. Everyone has an opinion. And, you learn through that and you grow through that. And so if you've got to be willing to take that first step because business is scary, and running businesses can be scary. But the first step is being, confident in yourself and knowing that you've got something to contribute. And once you get past that first barrier, the rest become a little bit easier to knock down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You talked a little bit about having a very successful team in the industry that you're proud of and your ability to have a team that could weather the ups and downs and, as you call it, make hay. What were some of the things about your team that led to that success or some of the things that you put in place to create this success?
Our team was very close. So, I won't say that there were not times, and there wasn't a period of time where I had to learn how to be a good leader. And I'll just segue there for a second and say, a lot of my behaviors emulated the behaviors of the people that I was working for. What I neglected to understand and realize until later on in my career is that while it worked for the people I was working for, it didn't necessarily work for the team. And once I learned that, people are your most important asset, and not everyone can be managed exactly the same. I began to really respect and admire the differences in all the folks and realize that the value a leader brings is the trust the team has in them. And so we were a close team who worked together all the time. I'd work in the trenches with them sometimes. They'd work, outside of the trenches with me a lot of times, but we knew each other, we trusted each other. If the team trusts each other and the team trusts the leader, you can get a lot done. We, in our heyday, we'd gone from being number 6 in our market to number 1 in less than 30 months, which was an incredible feat in a 6-man market, going from last to first. And, one of the things that we learned was not to believe our own BS, and not to think too much of ourselves, and to remember, being number one is the toughest spot to be in. Number two is great. You always have a mark to set for yourself. Number one's a little harder. So when you get to that point, how you sit at a table, how you set goals, how you look at your market, and making sure that the team is all on the same page. Um, that really helped us. When we went through some bad times in the uh, 2012, we our factories were flooded in Thailand, and we lost everything. We had built more than 50% of the world's disk drives the quarter before, which was about 60 million, and we, as the flood hit, had 4 million disk drives to give, and that was it. And we didn't know what we were going to do. Um, we had to go talk to our customers. We had to explain that no matter what they wanted or what they thought, there wasn't anything more coming. It was going to take us a year or more to build ourselves back. Um, the team was devastated. They didn't understand, what are we going to do? We went from first to now we've got nothing. And what we really had to sit down and do was talk about what were the things we could control, what were the things we couldn't control, and what did we want to be? What was the best outcome we could see for ourselves
Hmm.
over that 18 months? And to be consistent and honest, and give the team a goal of, you know, here's what we're gonna do as a management team, and build ourselves back. In the meantime, here's what we need to do to keep the business going. So we had to shift from being a primarily OEM business, meaning, shipping to the big PC makers, because we didn't have the volume to do that. We knew our competitors were going to go in and lock these guys up for some period of time, as a result of our downfall. So we had to shift into another business segment and vertical, and work with our more consumer related businesses. And as we did that, we had to think about supply and demand. And since there was not a lot of supply, raise the price. And I remember people thinking and looking at us saying, we're at the worst point we've ever been in our evolution as a company, and you're telling us now that we should go out and raise the price. What are people going to think? And you know what? People thought, I'll take anything I can get. Um, I'll pay anything to get this because I need it right now. But there was a lot of fear in doing that. So the team had a lot of faith and trust in the management that we knew what we were doing. And we had to be true to ourselves and true to the market, understanding how much it could take, and when we had to stop that, and when, we'd built ourselves back to a point where we had to go back into a more balanced business. But it was a tough time for everybody. And I think it was the fact that the team knew each other, and trusted management, that we were able to keep the team. And by the way, our stock price ended up going to a place that it had never been before as a result of what we did during that downtime, and how quickly we were able to build ourselves back as a business.
Hmm. Well, I'd love to be on a team, as you said, 1 + 1 + 1 equals more than 3. Sounds like the right place to be. Hey, just to kind of wrap things up a little bit, you had suggested that you were the crazy woman from Western Digital who kicked butt on the males over there. Any funny one quick story or something that you want to share about kicking some butt as a crazy woman?
Oh my goodness. Um, you know, there's a couple of things that I would say, as a woman, I don't really think about it that way.
Yeah,
I would say that there's some funny stories where I was successful and people didn't understand how that was. Maybe I'll give this example.
yeah.
We had a customer in Asia that I became very familiar with, and I still know the people today. But my first meeting that I went to with them, all the men left the room. They left me in the room with these three female procurement people, and they pushed all the men on their side out of the room. And a woman walked in and said she was the procurement officer, and she said to me, she said, we're all moms, we're all married, we all have things to do. I'm going to put a timer on the table. It's for 1 hour. If we can't get it done in 1 hour, we're not going to get it done. And she
Hmm.
said, this would never work if we were in a room full of men. So let's just sit here for an hour and get it done. And an hour later, we walked out. We had our deal done. No one had been successful in doing that before. And it was just a different tactic. It was funny.
Yeah.
And so I always say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And I have found that, that as a woman, I was able to get that done with them, and the men were very mystified by how that happened. But they never tried to interrupt anymore. They always just sent us in by ourselves and let us do it. Let us do it our way. So, yeah, I don't like to talk about victories over my male peers or anything like that.
Sure.
I'll just say that there was a lot of skepticism, and I think over time, a lot of respect. And so there's a lot of funny little anecdotes about things that have happened being in meetings where where I was mistaken as the assistant as opposed to the boss,
Mm-hmm.
and how that all worked out as we got through the meetings. But I've had a lot of interesting experiences happen. I just would say I think that over time those people don't think about me as the woman anymore either. They just thought about me as the person who led the business.
Yeah, I think we live in a better society worldwide as a whole as it relates to women in business. They've proven their mark, and I am so proud of the accomplishments of the women in my life and the women that I've had on this podcast. It's just absolutely incredible, the stories that we've put out there. And by the way, my wife kicks my butt around the house every single day. And yes, honey, I was going to do the dishes anyway. So, so you guys keep doing what you're doing. Cindi, it's just so wonderful to hear your story and your success, but more importantly, where you're going in the future with your diversity and ability to educate people. What exactly is that going to look like, and how can people find out more once you get this program launched, and how you're going to be helping people?
Yeah, I'm in the early stages of doing that, but what I really want to be able to do is work with women and work with different groups of people um, to find their seat at the table, to be able to be confident in themselves, and then learn how to build diverse teams and use those teams for their success. And so you can find me on LinkedIn. I think you're going to put some of my contact information out there as it's develops and I get a little further along in building my platform. You'll see me, forming some Facebook groups and doing some more speaking. I hope to write a book, but I'm really interested in just connecting with people who are at early stages of their career or moving into leadership roles and would like to understand how to make that transition smooth and successful for them, really through the diversity platform.
I think it's wonderful. Yes, I'll put your LinkedIn account on this podcast in the notes. So if you want to track Cindi and what she's doing, you'll be able to find it there. If you're not connected, it's Cindi Grace, CindiGrace. You can find her on LinkedIn, and we can follow along the story. So, Cindi, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and sharing with us, and just making a new importance on diversity, because I just think it's such a wonderful topic. So again, thank you.
Well, I thank you for having me on your show, and I hope your listeners find some value in this.